to my channel. For this video today, we're going to be going over functions. Function is basically a mini program you put into your code, and it makes it easier to read and simpler to understand. And it is basically a block of code that only runs when it is called. In Python, we can create a function by defining it by using the keyword def. And then after that, we need to name our function. For this example, let's name it FA. Put in your parentheses and a semicolon. Now, when we put enter, it should be indented. And whatever code, this code that we put in here only gets executed when it is called. Okay, so for example, let's try to print mood, and when we run it, you notice it wouldn't print out to the prompt because we haven't called the function yet. And in order to call the function, you type in whatever name you used for the function in the parentheses, and when we run it, it should print out mood because we're calling it. So let's start with an if-else statement. If mood is equal to happy, semicolon, print yay, else, semicolon, print what's wrong. And the reason is giving us an error because we need to put mood as the parameter, and it asking us for value. So let's put in happy for our mood, and let's make sure you put it in quotes. And when we run this, it should print out yay. It prints out mood first, which is this very first line right here, and then since we're happy, it'll go to the if statement and forego the else statement. Now, if we print out sad and run it, it prints out mood first, and then it goes for the if statement. If mood is happy, it prints out yay. Since it's not, it goes to the else statement and it prints out what is wrong. So function is like where we store our code and reuse it for later. Functions in programming, we don't like to repeat ourselves, and functions can be very efficient in that. And for functions to run, you have to invoke it with the name you chose. So for example, I cannot use any capital, it'll give us an error, as you can see. So make sure it's exactly the name you called, and rather than me typing all this code out over again, I'll just type in a single line later on. In Python, there are two other types of functions. There are the built-in types, which are the print, the input, the type, the float, the int. We also treat these as new reserved words, so we avoid them as variable names. And the other type is functions we define ourselves and use. Let's create a sample program to find the first 13 Fibonacci numbers. Fibonacci sequence is a sequence of numbers where the number is the sum of the number of the first two numbers that came before it. The sequence first digits are 0 and 1. So let's define a function using the keyword def, and let's name this function fubu and give it a parameter of n, and you'll see why in a second. Let's go a equals 0, b equals 1, and then let's get a for loop for I in range. Let's get 0 and n, and that's where this n comes in. Semicolon, like that. X equals a. Okay, a equals b, and b is equals to x plus b. And it's giving us an error because we forgot the n. So now let's return this statement with using the keyword return a. And the return statement is used to exit a function and go back to where it is called. Now let's show the first 13 numbers, Fibonacci numbers, and let's get a for loop for C in range. And it doesn't have to be C, you can use whatever you want. For C in range, this was 0, 13. And let's print out our result. Make sure you call your function, which is call your function, which is Fubu, and then C, because that's what we use here. Make sure you don't forget your semicolon, like I did. Okay. So when we run this now, it should show us the sum of the first 13 numbers. Okay, as it goes. So it goes 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, and it goes on. You can, the reason I put n there is because you can use what you can find the Fibonacci series for whatever you want. So if you want to do the first 50 numbers, you can do that, you know, and it shows that really big number. So for this sake, let's just do 13. Okay. Now let's create a program to where it'll calculate how much you made for the week. It'll input the user to enter the hours they worked and their pay rate, and it'll print out the result of how much their pay will be for the week. So let us create some variables. Let's call h equals, let's input the user, enter hours, and let's get r for rate equals input the user to enter rate, and let's convert it to a floating number. So let's go floating hours is equals to float, and h, because that's what we named our variable up here, and we'll do the same for rate. So fr equals float and rate. There we go. Now we need to create our function. Okay. So let us, in order to do that, we start with the define def keyword to define our function, and let's name this function final pay. Okay. And then let's give it some parameters of hours and rate, and semicolon next, it goes to the intended block. Let's get some if-else statements in there. So if hours is greater than 40, semicolon, regular equals rate times hours, and then overtime pay equals parentheses hours minus 40, 0, times rate times 0.5. And then let's create pay equals regular pay plus overtime pay. There we go. Now what happens if they didn't work any overtime hours? That's where the else statement comes in. Else, we'll just go pay equals hours times rate. Okay. Now we need to return the value of this function. And how do we do that? We do that by using the keyword return and then pay, because that's what we named it right here. That's what we created the variable name, pay. Now we need to call the function. So how should we call the function? Let's give a variable fp and equals final pay, call it by the name because that's what we decided to name the function, final pay, and let's give it parameters of fh, and fh passing fh is hours and fr is the rate. The pay value, this pay value you see here, it goes back into this expression as a return value and gets assigned to fp. Okay. So now let's print out our pay. So print your pay is, let's do this, and then fp, because that's what we decided to name this right here. So when we print this out, it should prompt us to enter our hours, prompt us to enter our rate, and then it should print out exactly how much we made for the week. So enter hours, let's say 40 hours. Your rate, let's say 20 an hour. There you go. You made 800 minus taxes, of course. So what if we worked overtime? Let's go 50 hours And let's go 10. It should be 550. 550. Good. Now I want us to call this function. Okay, so in order to call that, remember we use sad up here. So let's go happy. And when we call it, it should print out also at the end of this. So let's go 40, 20, and there you go. It prints out mood because it's still mood, and it prints out yay because we're happy. And that's how functions are useful. So whenever you get into work and you write in multiple hundreds and thousands of lines of code, rather than writing all this code out multiple times, you can just create a function, put the code in a function, and call it whenever you want it to get executed. But that'll be it for our functions videos. For the next video, we're going to be building our first project, which we'll be using everything we learned in our previous videos, which are comments, variables, conditional statements, loops, and now functions. See you at the next video.